faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair, she broke your throne, she cut your hair, and from your...
Good morning. You are now part of the Shout Festival in Birmingham. What is that?
At the moment, I guess it's around uplifting and facilitating different queer communities and different queer events within Birmingham.
Mhm.
So I'm currently an artist in residence there, which means I'm being mentored by Hannah Phillips, the wonderful Hannah Phillips. I have to give her a shout out to write a play called Breeders, which is around I guess the queer history of Birmingham, the
Mhm.
queer nightlife scene, how it's changed and evolved, and also kind of touching on the AIDS crisis and what it
Mhm.
means to be a caregiver as a queer person.
Tell me, Louis, what does an artist in residence mean and why is it in existence then?
So it was important and it was nice for me that they could pay me to do
Mhm.
this because it means I can fully dedicate my time to it. I don't feel guilty. It's work. And so it's the first time I've been paid for a project, for a creative project like this. So that was really exciting. But yeah, it means I have time, I have space, I have support to basically really make mistakes and hone my practice. So I'm just about to submit a first draft of the script, and I'm sure that will go through multiple iterations. We held a reading of the script when I had about, I want to say around 20 pages
Mhm.
in December, and already the script has changed a lot. But like I say, without the time and space of being an artist in residence with Shout, um, I don't think that would have been the case.
So the initial idea of Breeders is yours. Do we censor it in any way?
I was keen when I was making this because a lot
Mhm.
of it's historically based.
Yeah.
Um, to especially the historical narrative, the one set in the late 80s and the one touching on the AIDS crisis. I didn't want to just write what I thought that looked
Mhm.
like. So I've been very keen to speak to people and have people involved
Yeah.
who were there. And so I wouldn't say there's any element of censorship. I'd say there's an element of
Mhm.
collaboration in
Mhm.
making sure that this is a story that queer people in Birmingham
Yeah.
actually want to see and that resonates.
Two things that shock me. One, this is a play which touches on AIDS, which is not about London or New York. And secondly, you must be far too young for this. To remember, to
Uh,
remember, to remember it firsthand. I know I read somewhere in university that you made this a project of yours, but why? Because I'm always concerned, but the decade since the pandemic has lessened our fear and worry, especially for people who weren't touched by it. Why were you so moved to do this?
I'm glad you picked up on the fact it wasn't in London and New York because that has been um, that's a kind of driving force behind a lot of the work I'm doing is
Good.
decentering
Hmm.
the London-centric narrative
Yeah.
of the AIDS crisis. I think there's some really important and interesting work that has happened around that. I cite It's a Sin. I think that was great by Russell T Davis.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but the thing is, I live just outside of Birmingham. I went to college here. Just opposite me at the Hippodrome in Hippodrome Square, there is a HIV and AIDS memorial, right? And so I think one day I saw that it was created by a fantastic guy who I've been in touch with called Gary Jones.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought, well, this must have happened here, right?
Yeah.
And but it must have happened differently. I think that's a crucial thing, is that these London-centric narratives, London was kind of the epicenter of how people kind of understand and perceive the AIDS crisis. But of course, they had the first specialized HIV and AIDS ward with Princess
That
Diana.
that is why it is in London because several of my friends who lived like in Norfolk would go because these are centers of excellence. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no. Although this is the thing, is that
Yeah.
I remember weirdly, I spoke to a lady. I was in Sheffield once, and we started discussing it, and she said it all comes down to the north-south divide. And in my head, I was like, really? But the more I thought about it, this pandemic would have been encountered so differently by a young man in a rural village up north compared to a young man who was in London. And that's not to say that it was pleasant or
Yeah,
easy to deal with in either of
yeah.
those contexts. But I think it's important to understand that this happened everywhere, and that, like I say, it happened here, but it must have happened differently. And looking into the specifics of why it was different, what made it different, the different support groups, the different support networks, the different medical treatments available, has been really fascinating. What I'm trying to understand
Hmm.
through this project is what gay Birmingham then
Hmm.
owes gay Birmingham now, or vice versa, what gay Birmingham now owes gay Birmingham then.
Hmm.
I think a lot of, particularly like London, I think it's maybe reconciled itself with its AIDS crisis in a lot more of an obvious way. You still have a lot of histories, you still have a lot of people are still interested in it. You have like cultural touchstones, places like the Royal Vauxhall Tavern that people can go to reminisce, that
Hmm.
hold a lot of this history. And this history is here in Birmingham, but there doesn't seem to be many sites of kind of material memory that you can kind of go to and point to and say, aha, I can connect with that. That's interesting to me. And I think that's what I was looking for. I was looking for these cultural spaces that I could go, that's my history.
Yeah.
But they're being knocked down. They've turned into like, I don't know, coffee shops.
Because people want to erase history or queer history, which is uncomfortable.
I think the queer scene has changed. In all honesty, I don't know the answer to that. This is what I'm trying to work out through
Okay.
the play, is why are these spaces disappearing? I think a lot of it is um, down to the rise of social media and the fact that these spaces aren't as necessary. You can go online and find a lot of these spaces. You can find apps where you can meet up with people without having to go out and
Yeah.
find them. Um, I just wish it was commemorated more. I wish it was more obvious.
So,
Wish I didn't have to dig as much as I've had to dig to find this history out closer to me.
so Lewis, is this a play about the future? Is this a play about describing to younger generations who missed all of this? What do you want to aim with this play?
I think it is about the future.
Mm.
It's funny because when I first started out, I the tagline was a play on queer extinction, right?
Mm. Mm.
That that in both these scenarios, both the AIDS crisis and the the contemporary narrative that's in the play around two women trying to have children, it's the idea of dying out in one sense or another. Um, but then I spoke to people again, like I say, I'm trying to be led by the people, and they said, well, that isn't our, of course, in a sense, that was their experience, but also their experience was also one of community, and it was a unique experience that um, you had a homophobic government, you had a homophobic police force, you had a virus that was wiping these people out, which created a unique kind of perfect storm
Mhm.
for a community to form. And I think this is what I mean when I say, what does gay Birmingham now? What's the relationship between the two? Is that where is this sense of community gone, and how do we find that sense of community now? And I think that as I've been writing, it became more apparent that as these women are trying to um, decide whether they want a child, that idea of what care and community
Mhm.
looks like becomes very obvious to them or explicit as a thing they need to consider. Because again, lesbians were there during the AIDS crisis, and a lot of the time primary caregivers to these men who didn't have a lot
Very
of
important to mention that too.
yeah.
So tell me, I'm coming to your play. Am I going to leave angry, upset, happy? Uh, what am I feel when I come out of a play?
I actually hope you feel optimistic. I think that I've gone round this multiple times in my head. Like I say, it started out as a play on extinction. And I think if you would have come out of that, you would have felt a lot
Mhm.
differently to how you'll come out of it now I've got to a first draft.
Yeah.
I think um, hopefully you'll come out optimistic, but also I hope it's a rallying cry to see and feel and look for opportunities to connect with one another still. Again, Birmingham, queer spaces are disappearing more than they're appearing in Birmingham. I mean, I look back at this history and Birmingham was a sprawling scene. You could go to Moore Street, you could go to Snow Hill, you could go to bars underneath clubs. You could go anywhere.
But in backing it up, we don't have a sort of market. We have online, we have all sort of activities. What I wanted to say to you is very important to me and to my readers. You're a queer man writing our history. That's important to me and important to us that you are saying it. And even if people don't want to confront it straight away, it needs to be there on file. It needs to be said. It needs to be read. It needs to be listened to. And I don't want to lecture younger people, but someone who was personally touched a great deal by the AIDS thing, I want people to share and know what our brothers and sisters went through. When does
Sure.
the play open?
Yeah, that's currently being worked out.
Okay,
We're hoping for it to coincide with Pride Month, hopefully, because
good,
luckily there's still a huge Pride scene here, and there's a lot of different festivals and
good.
celebrations.
Good, good, good. Well, keep in touch with us. Let us know. In the meantime, we're going to give us a shout and put your details up. People can reach out. Thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you very much.
Faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof. Her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throne. She cut your hair.